The number of guns in the community has dramatically increased. It's now hovering around 4 million legally owned guns in Australia. When we looked at the number of guns that had been stolen over time, it equated to roughly 1 every 4 hours. And law enforcement has said that the theft of legally owned firearms is the biggest single source of illegal guns in the community.
If we could talk about the last time that we had major gun reform after Port Arthur, what changes did John Howard make, and how do we know about how they actually made the country safer?
The National Firearms Agreement was historic and landmark legislation, and it's obviously still hugely popular with the public today. John Howard, in the wake of the Port Arthur massacre, gathered all the states and territories, and the National Firearms Agreement did things like banning or restricting semi-automatic and automatic firearms, restricting the importation of those kinds of firearms. It included introducing mandatory licensing systems and background checks for all licence holders. It introduced things like rules for the storage and use of firearms. Obviously, it implemented the National Gun Buyback Scheme, which saw around 650,000 firearms surrendered to the authorities that at the time cost around $300 million to the Commonwealth. And we know that the National Firearms Agreement was incredibly successful because we saw around 13 mass shootings in the 18 years preceding Port Arthur. In the wake of the National Firearms Agreement being introduced, that number of mass shootings involving casualties of 5 or more people dropped to 0. It accelerated the decline of homicides by firearm in Australia, and it also accelerated the decline in suicides by firearms in Australia. So it had a dramatic improvement in public safety, and it's really clear that the fewer guns are in the Australian community, the safer Australians are.
Could you paint a picture of our current patchwork of gun laws around the country?
Yeah, well, as popular as the National Firearms Agreement was at the time, it's really important to note that really no state or territory, or the Commonwealth indeed, fully implemented all of the details of that agreement. Each state and territory still has a slightly different approach to gun laws, and really we're only as safe as our worst state or territory. Currently, WA and New South Wales are the only states that have caps on the number of guns an individual can own. So all the other states and territories really have no limits. And we know from the data that we looked into from various police forces across Australia that there are a number of people who own huge numbers of guns, and it's not necessarily, farmers who are using them to control pest animals on their properties, for example. We know a large number of guns are held in city and metropolitan areas, and in New South Wales, for example, there are close to 100 people who own over 100 guns each, many of them in the city. And obviously, when it comes to the Bondi perpetrators, they had 6 guns, lived in the city. And there's a lot of people in the Australian public saying, why do you need that many guns?